All right, please stand and cover yourselves for the reading of our verses today. In case I haven't said this in a while, this is not a law of God. This is a tradition. It's a tradition that we all around here like very much. It shows respect and reverence and all that sort of thing. So if you can't get up because your body's all broken down, or maybe you're hooked to wires like I am, nobody's committing a sin here, just saying. All right, so we begin today our journey through Shemot, chapter 37. It's also known as Exodus. Won't take that long to get through this one because we're going to change it up since we've already been through every single verse at least twice, and some of them, this will be the third time. Yeah, so I'm not going to do what I normally do, but we'll see how it goes because I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do either. I still haven't really decided. So anyway, let's begin. Begins with verse 1. Vaya'as Betzael ha'eret ha'aron. It's not Aharon, it's Ha'aron, right? Atzei Shitim Amatayim Va'chezi Arhu Ve'ama Va'chezi Rachbo Ve'ama Va'chezi Komato Vayezapehu Zahav Tahor Mi Bayit Umi Chutz Vaya'as Lo Zer Zahav Saviv Vayitzok Lo Arba Tabot Zahav Al Arba Pa'amotai Ushete Tabot Al Zal O Ha'echat Ushete Tabaot Al Zao Ha'shenit Vaya'as Vadim Atzei Shitim Vayezaf Otam Zahav Vayaveh Et Habadim Bata. A little distracted here. Bata Baot Al Zaot Ha'aron La Set Et Ha'aron Vaya'as Kaporet Zahav Tahor Amatayim Va'chetzi Arka Va'ama Va'chetzi Rachba Vaya'as Shnei Cheruvim Zahav Misha Asa Otam Mishnei Ketzot HaKaporet Keruv Echad Mikaza Mize Ucheru Echad Mikaza Mize Min HaKaporet Asaet HaKeruvim Mishnei Ketzotai Vahiyu HaKeruvim Porsei Chenafayim Lema'la Zachim Behanefehem Al HaKeparet Upenehem Ish El Achiv El HaKaporet Hayu Penei HaRuvim Vaya'as Et HaShulchan Atzei Shitim Hamatayim Arku Vehama Rachbo Ve'ama Va'chezi Komato Vayezaf Oto Zahav Tahor Vaya'as Lo Zer Zahav Saviv Vaya'as Lo Misgeret Topach Saviv Vaya'as Zer Za'av Lemisgarto Saviv Vayizok Lo Arba Tabot Zahav Vayiten Et HaTabaot Al Arba HaPeot Asher La Arba Rag Lav Leumat Misgeret Hayu HaTabaot Batim Labadim Laset Et HaShulchan Vaya'as et ha-badim atze shitim vayetzaf otam zahav la set et hashulchan. Vaya'as et ha-kelim asher al hashulchan et ke'arotaiv ve'et kapotaiv ve'et menachiyotaiv ve'et ha-kesavot asher yusach bahen zahav tahor. Vaya'as et ha-menorah zahav tahor miksha asa et ha-menorah yerecha vekana gevieha kaftoreha uferacheha mimena ha-yu veshisha kanim yotzim mizedeha shelosha kene menorah mizeda ha-echad ushelosha kene menorah mizeda hashena sheloshash geviim meshukadim bakena ha-echad kaftor v'ferach ushelosha geviim meshukadim bekane echad kaftor v'ferach ken leshishet ha-kanim ha-yotzim min ha-menorah uva menorah arba'a geviim meshukadim kaftoreha uferacheha v'haftor tachat shnei ha-kanim mimena v'haftor tachat shnei ha-kanim mimena v'haftor tachat shnei ha-kanim mimena leshishet ha-kanim he-yotzim mimena kaftorehem ukenotam mimena ha-yu kula miksha achat zahav tahor. Vaya'as et neroteha shiv'a umalkaheha umachtoteha zahav tahor. Kikar zahav tahor asa ota ve'et kol keleha. Vaya'as et mizbach ha-ketoret atze shitim ama arku va'ama rachbo ravua ve'amatayim komato mimenu hayu karnotai. Vayetzaf oto zahav tahor et gago ve'et kir hirotaiv zaviv ve'et karnotaiv vaya'as lo zer zahav saviv ushite tabot zahav asa lo mitachat le zero al shite zal otaiv al shinei zidiv levadim laset oto bahem. Vaya'as et habadim atze shitim vayetzaf otam zahav. Vaya'as et shemen hamishcha kodesh ve'et ketoret hasamim tahor ma'aseh rokeach. All right, you may be seated. Some days I just can't read. Jeez. Don't know why I set that down. All right, off to a pretty rough start. See if we can improve in this a little bit. In chapter 37 of his book, A Commentary on the Book of Exodus, Umberto Moshe David Casuto gave a very limited commentary in which he pointed out a number of changes from the earlier renderings of these verses from chapters 25 and 30. Words and phrases are here omitted, he said. There are also differences in spelling and grammatical form, as well as verbal variations. There is the addition of the particle et, that's that word that has no meaning, which is a sign of the accusative, he said, and a change in the listed order of the vessels. The lampstand was changed from ne-ro, met-no, I hope it doesn't go this way all day. It was changed from me-no-rot to me-no-ra, from plural to singular. There was no mention of the bread of faces, which is called shewbread in the English Bibles, or the kindling of the menorah. Casuto pointed out that this chapter was limited in scope to the actual building of the furniture and vessels and did not cover their placement or usage, which is the major difference here. So our verse 31, it's literally would be, and he made Bezalel, so Bezalel made the chest, shittim, from shittim trees, cubits, it's in plural, cubits and half, which we get 2.5 cubits from that, in length, he said, and cubit, singular, cubit and half, which is 1.5 cubit, in width, and cubit, in singular, and half, height, it, or height, he, it and he being the same thing. So I don't really feel that we need to go through this, given that I think this is the third time we've actually had this verse. And remember, this isn't 3 different versions. This isn't somebody messing up. This isn't 3 different things being slammed together. And this one over here is J, and this one over here is P. That thing has been debunked 10 ways to Sunday. It's not real. There are no J, P, and whatever else those people were teaching. It simply isn't right. This is the style of Hebrew. It was the same style as the Ugaritic text turned out to be. Anyway, we've gone over that in the past. So the translation here is, and Bezalel made the chest of shittim trees. 2.5 cubits was its length, and 1.5 cubits its width, and 1.5 cubits, its height. So we can compare that to chapter 25, verse 10, which said, and they will make a chest. There's your change. They will make. Here it's they just made, but there it's they will make. So that's literally the only difference. We went from they will to they just did. So they will make a chest from shittim trees. The length of it will be 2.5 cubits. The width of it will be 1.5 cubit. And the height of it will be 1.5 cubit. Now, obviously, I translated it a little bit differently, but the Hebrew words are identical, except that one says they will and one says they did. Casuto pointed out that Bezalel's name was added here in 37:1, where we are, but left out in 25:10. And he said, perhaps because verse 1 is the point in which the actual building of the furniture began. It's a total guess. Nobody knows. But it's as good as any. I'm not saying I agree. I'm not saying I disagree. I will say I don't agree, but I will say I don't disagree. Let's put it that way. I don't want to jump off on that very thin limb. Of the words they will make, our Judah, the son of our Shalom, said that everyone should be part of making the chest so they can learn the Torah. Ooh, he was so deep. That's nonsense. It was only made that one time, right? And it was made by that guy and whoever helped him. And that's the end of it. So trying to be all spiritual. It bothers me when people try to be all spiritual because and when they go outside of the Torah to find spiritualness. The Hebrew Bible repeatedly says that the Spirit of God is in fact the words that come out of his mouth. In other words, the Bible itself is the Spirit of God. It says it over and over and over again. It's all throughout. Of course, you got to read it in Hebrew. They didn't translate it that way in English, but the Hebrew text makes it real clear that the Spirit of God are the words that came out of his mouth. Why? Because the Spirit is the breath. And the breath went across God's vocal cords and came out of his mouth as words. There's nothing deeper than the breath that comes out of the inside of God. Nothing. Not the Haggadah, not the Halacha, not the Talmud, not the Gematria, Gemara, Mishnah. I'm still looking for the main one. What's that thing? They got the little hand with all the stupid eyeball in it. And why am I going blank on that? Somebody help us out here. What the heck is that?
One with the numbers?
I already said that. Yeah, it's numbers. They take everything and turn it into this deep, nonsensical thing. Is it? No. That girl that used to be a singer turned into an actor, and she barely wore clothes, and even in her 50s. And she sang Kabbalah. I knew that would get someone to tell me. It's not there. You'll never get deeper than the words that came out of the mouth of God, ever. Under any circumstances, it's not possible. So our Judah, the son of our Shalom, what he's saying is nonsensical. All right, of the words chest or ark, as it's usually said in English, Rashi and Nachmanides believed that the chest did not have legs. Good for them. Even Ezra said the ark rested on legs because it would be disgraceful for it to touch the ground. What? He also wrote that he did not know if the measurements were from the outside edges or the inside edges, which tells me he is not a builder or was not a builder. Because all of us that build things know. Anyway, just saying. All right, verse 2. Literally in English, it was, and he overlaid, literally and he overlaid it with gold, or it says gold pure, so pure gold, from house and from outside, and he made to it edge gold round about. All right, so I'm just going to go straight to the translation. We don't really need to go through every single word. We've been through them several times, although maybe it's a good time for a pop quiz. What do y'all think? Should I ask if you know what the words are? All right, here's my translation of verse 2. And he overlaid it with pure gold inside and out, and made a wreath of gold around it. That's more of a guess than it is. Some of these words are obscure, and we've lost the meaning of them over the ages. But anyway, I get the feeling that it may well it's just a, like a rope work that went around it. Wreath may not be the right word, but that is the one that most of the English translations use. So we can compare that to chapter 25, verse 11, which essentially says the same thing. And you will overlay it with pure gold instead of, and they just did overlay it. This is you will do it. And then it's an idiom, inside and out. It says from house and from outside. That means inside out. You shall overlay it, and you shall make the edges of gold all around it. So it literally could have been anything. But the idea of it being a rope work kind of goes with the designs, the things at the time in that area, if you will. May not have been a good design if you were in, North America at that time when we don't even know if people were actually there. Just saying. Anyway, whatever the style was of its time and its place is all I'm saying. Of the words overlay it, Babylonian Talmud in Yoma 72b says that Rashi believed 3 arks were made. The top and bottom ark of gold, the middle ark of wood. It's one of the dumbest things I think I've ever read in my life. But they come up with these ideas. Oh, well, it talked about the top, and oh, well, it talked about the bottom. The problem with Rashi is that he didn't, I don't believe that any of these sages from the Dark Ages spoke Hebrew at all. If they did, it was such a, I don't know, the word that's in my head here is not a good one for TV audiences. What's a good word for they've taken it and turned it into ghetto speech? Let's just slang. It was such a ghetto slang version of Hebrew in their day that it's not even for me recognizable. The biggest problem that I have with them is that they didn't recognize the simplest of idioms. And you have an idiom here talking about the inside and the out, and from it, Rashi says there were three. No, there were not. If there were three, they would have been told to build three. They were not told to build three. Rashi simply didn't recognize a simple Hebrew idiom. By the way, he didn't recognize it because he wasn't reading a Hebrew text. He was reading an Aramaic text written by Onkelos. I have a real problem with Onkelos. I know he's the all-standard version that everybody's supposed to read in their synagogue. And yes, I use Onkelos. I got them right here. But I may have been slapping something other than Onkelos, but it's down there. I use him. We talk about Onkelos all the time, but the problem that I have with Onkelos is that he didn't recognize simple Hebrew idioms. He knew there was something wrong here because it's saying something that makes no sense. It's saying something like from house and from outside. Well, what the heck does that mean? So he tried to make it make sense, and he couldn't make it make sense. He only muddied the water further because he didn't know the Hebrew idioms, right? His knowledge of Hebrew was extremely limited at best. And so you get 1,000 years away from that man. By the time you get down to Rashi, he's talking about making 3 arcs. It's worse than ghetto. All right.
Even my standard American says inside and out.
Your New American Standard even says inside and out. Well, good for them. Probably had someone who spoke Hebrew help them with the translation. Just saying. I've never even seen it, so I didn't know that. All right, verse 3, literally, and he poured to 4 rings gold, and 4 feet his, and 2 rings upon side he the one, and 2 rings upon side he the second. And that really should sound familiar to you. All right, pop quiz. What's the word for 4? Arba. What's the word for ring? Y'all remember that? Tabot. Some probably say tabot, but it's literally tabot. Same. What about the word for gold? Anybody remember that one? Zahav. Remember, it means shiny. Oh, rich. Man, good for you. Probably everybody knew that one. We've had that so many times. All right, so here's my translation. And he cast. Now, the word is poured, right? So if you're pouring gold, what are you doing? You're casting it. And so I put it in as an idiom. I realize that most of what I talk about is not really literally an idiom, but I call everything that's not supposed to be literal an idiom. I just throw it all in one big pot. So I put it in as an idiom, which means in my translation it has the little bitty I with the parentheses around it in front and after the idiom begins and ends, and then the literal word is given in square brackets and blue letters. Those of you who have seen my work know that. All right, so I put down, and he cast 4 rings of gold for it. 2 rings on one side and 2 rings on the other. You know, that being the second side, that means the other side, on the 4 legs. All right, so we can compare that to 25:12, and you will cast 4 rings of gold and put them on its 4 feet. 2 rings on the first side and 2 rings on the second. Of the words 4 feet, even Ezra took it to mean that there were 4 legs protruding downward from the chest. Okay, probably so. Rashi, Nachmanides, and Sephorno all render it corners. It could be that too. Kasuto settles the argument. Now we're going to know. With the following Hebrew grammar rule. Oh, imagine that. It says, I have the quote now, and put the rings on its 4 feet, not its 4 corners, as the word is usually explained. Short feet, measuring a few fingers' breadth, whose purpose was to prevent the ark from resting directly on the ground. The original meaning of the word pa'am, the singular, without suffixes of the aforementioned Hebrew word, is foot, and the plural termination of nouns appertaining to members of the human body, when used figuratively of a part of an object, is ot. In other words, because it ends with ot, some people thought it was plural. That's not the case. So, he settled it by saying 4 feet, not 4 corners. So who was right? Even Ezra. Even Ezra. He was right. Rashi, Nachmanides, and the Sephorno were all wrong. Other words, and 2 rings. Even Ezra, Rashi, and Nachmanides believed that the ark had only 4 rings. Tosafot, Babylonian Talmud Yoma 72a, SV Ketiv, says there were 8 rings. Again, people not realizing the simplest of idioms have to come up with these insane things, doubling the number of rings. The text clearly says there were 4. Now we're saying there are 8 because we can't explain certain things because we're taking them literally. Bad Jew. Notice I didn't say juju. All right, verse 4, literally, and he made staves, trees, shittim, and he overlaid with them gold. We would say, and he overlaid them with gold. But anyway, you get the idea. Where was the... So we got the, and he made... Here's that, vade. It's the word, the stabs is the word from separation, something separated, a part, like in equal portions. Especially parts of the body. Members is the Bible in English will often say members. It's of a tree, in other words, it's branches. So it's separate branches. That's where the separate comes into this whole thing. It's an older usage because even in this time period, they tended to use the word for tribe. No, they used the word for staff to mean tribe. Yeah, I'm thinking of that backwards. Never mind. Moving on. Somebody knows what they're talking about. Verse 4's translation. And he made staves of shittim trees and overlaid them with gold. It's almost identical to the literal, isn't it? We can compare that to chapter 25, verse 13. And make staves and make them, not he did make, but and make them from shittim trees, and you shall overlay them with gold. Even Ezra pointed out that the length of the stabs was not specified. Not sure if it's important, but it wasn't specified. He is right about that. In verse 5, it says, literally, and he brought the staves with rings upon sides, the chest to bear the chest. All right. It's not really as confusing as it sounds. So let's move on down to the actual translate. I'm having to go through all the individual information. So my translation, and he placed the stabs into the rings on the sides of the chest to carry the chest. All right, so in 25:14, and you will place the stabs through the rings on the sides of the chest to carry the chest with them. So with them is really, we went from he did it to you will, and then it was to carry it, and it went from 4 carry it, changed it to 2 carry it, So it's the same exact words. It's the same exact thing. There's no bullet points because some little bitty difference. We've just gone from telling them what to do or what they will do, what they will make, to saying they've now made it. It has now been created. Verse 6 literally would have said, and he made, we say mercy seat, but it's really just the word for lid. So he made mercy seat or lid, gold pure, cubits and half. Remember what happens when they make it plural. So that's 2.5 cubits. Length her, or length it. You can say her or you can say it. It's the same word in Hebrew. And cubit, it says, and half width. So you got 2.5 in length, 1.5 in width. It's pretty straightforward. They just say it differently than we would. But that mercy seat, remember that word, kaporet? It's a covering, used only of the covering of the ark. So it is very specifically used in the biblical text of this very specific covering. It's a lid, people. It's just a lid that was made out of wood, obviously, and then covered with pure, or no, this one was made with pure gold. This wasn't covered, that's right. Anyway, so your translation, and he made a kaporet, a lid, also known as the mercy seat, because it's a very particular lid, of pure gold. Yeah, so this wasn't covering wood. This was pure solid gold. That lid would have been heavy. 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubit wide. When you compare that to chapter 25, verse 17, and you make the kaporet. Now, in this case, it was kaporet, but that's just, it changes from the k sound to the ch sound, just depending on the way the sentence is laid out. It doesn't change the meaning in any way. So, and you will make the kaporet, the top, of pure gold, 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide. So we went from you will to they just did. Do not overlay wood with gold. That's very important here. Even Ezra pointed out that the thickness is not given. The Babylonian Talmud in Sukkah 5a gives the tradition of it being the size of a closed fist. Yeah, that's one serious slab of gold that nobody would be able to pick up. And when you set it down on the ark that was made out of wood and covered with gold, it'd probably crush it. Yeah, it's ridiculous to think it was that thick. But it would have had to been relatively thick, maybe the width of a hand. It would have been thick and heavy, because if they'd made it real thin, it would have been all bendable, right? All right, so verse 7, and he made 2 cheruvim, gold hammered work, did with them from 2 ends the lid, the mercy seat. And that one sounds kind of funny, but I want to talk about that. Cheruvim. Do you guys remember that? It's they call cherub, or cherubims in some cases. It's a creature with 4 faces. The face of a man, of a lion, of an eagle, and the face of an ox, with 4 sets of wings, and the body of a man, but feet like hooves of an ox. How do we know that? Well, it's described in Ezra chapter 1, right? But here's the thing. How would they have known what that looked like? None of them would have ever seen one. Maybe Moshe saw it, because remember earlier it talked about Moshe do it according to what you've been shown. So maybe Moshe saw it. We don't know. But, oh, Rob, but doesn't it say we can't have graven images of things that fly in the air and walk on the land and swim in the sea? And check this out. You got a man's face, you got a lion, you got an eagle and an ox and all of these things. And isn't that against the Torah? No. Why is that, Rob? Well, because the cheruvim, are somewhere else. They don't fly in our air. They don't walk on our land, and they don't swim in our oceans, do they?
I recall that.
Just saying. Just saying. All right. Just wanted to point those things out. I've been meaning to say that for like months. That's the first time I've remembered. Like, totally. Anyway, verse 7. And he made 2 cheruvim of gold. Of a beaten work he made them at the ends of the kaporet of the lid, that really heavy gold lid. So in 25:18 it said, and you shall make 2 cheruvim from hammered gold and place them at both ends of the lid. Of the word cheruvim, based on the Babylonian Talmud in Sukkah 5b, Rashi said they had the form of a child's face. Do we remember where I got that information? Ezra. Rashbam said they had the form of a bird. Of the word hammered, Rashbam said the top and cherubim, in English it says cherubim, were hammered from a single piece of gold. Okay, this is something else that bothers me. The idea that the entire thing was hammered from a single piece of gold. No, it wasn't. For one thing, where are you going to find a piece of gold that big? Right? You take all these little nuggets and you pour them together and you put them in a smelting pot, and then you cut it up into smaller pieces. You got like 10, 15 chunks of gold out here, and you're hammering them out. You're making this part, and you're either molding the different pieces of gold together, because at this point they're very malleable. This is not one piece of work. It's ridiculous to even think that somebody could do something like that. But it's not the way it's done. These are people who have never seen this kind of work done before in their lives. People who have know that that's not how it's done, right? And you got to keep that in mind. People are giving their opinions about something for which they have nothing to base an opinion on. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Anywho, in verse 8 it says, keruv, so there's that word in singular, one from end from this, keruv, one from end from this, from the mercy seat, or from the lid, make the keruvim from 2 end his, or 2 end its. All right. Obviously, we're not going to take this literally, I hope. Let's see. Let's get down here. Well, that's a lot of words. Here's the translation. A keruv from this end, one from end from this end, and a keruv from that end, one from end from this. So it's one from this end and one from that end. Out of the kaporet, out of the lid, he made the keruvim. Then it says from 2 ends it's. So he made the keruvim at both ends. So let me read it again. A keruv from this end and a keruv from that end. Out of the lid, he made the keruvim at both ends. Out of it. So they're protruding out from the lid. They are not separate, is all it's trying to tell us. Now we can compare that to 25:19. It says, and make 1 keruv from this end and 1 keruv from the other end. You shall make the keruvim on both of its ends. Kasuto said there was not enough room for 2 images of quadrupeds. So Kasuto said there was not enough room for 2 images of quadrupeds on the top. Further, he said the cherubim, as it says in his book, were likely erect figures like those of Ezekiel's vision and those of Solomon's temple. I am in total and utter agreement with this. They weren't down on all fours. They were standing like a man. Remember, it had a body of a man. It just had the hooves of an ox. But they would have been standing up, not down on all fours, because they would have covered the entire lid had they have done that. And we know from Ezekiel's vision and from Solomon's temple that they weren't done that way there. So why would they have been done that way here? Anyway. Yeah, we've got time. And then verse 9, literally, and he was they, the cherubim, spreading wings to hire her, or hire its, covering with wings them upon the lid, and faces them, man to brother his, to the mercy seat were they, faces the cherubim. All right, so we're getting an actually clear image of how this stuff was put together. In Hebrew anyway. So let's see if we can do the same in English. And a lot of words in this one too. Let's see what we can do with this. Golly, that's a long way. All right, so my translation. And the wings of the cherubim spread out high, such that, I had to add such that so it makes sense in English, such that the lid was covered with their wings. Facing one another, that faces them man to his brother. That just means facing one another. The faces of the cherubim looked downward. See, that's an idiom, because what it said literally was, to the lid were their faces. All right, the lid's down here, right? They're standing up. So what does that mean? To the lid was their faces. It's a pretty simple idiom, right? Toward the lid. So it says, let me say it again, and the wings of the cherubim spread out high, such that the lid was covered with their wings. Facing one another, the faces of the cherubim looked downward toward the lid. Pretty clear image, right? Now we can compare that to 25:20, and the cherubim will be spreading their wings high, covering the lid with their wings, and they will face one another. The cherubim will be facing the lid. So their heads will be bowed toward the lid. Why are they bowing their head? Because they're praying to Jesus? No, they're bowing their head because that's where God's sitting. That's where the presence of God was going to sit, right? And so they're looking at God. That's all I'm saying. Rashi believed that the space between the wings and the top of the chest was 10 hands breadth high. Those are pretty tall, but he has nothing to base that on, but I'm okay with it. Casuto added, the conception of the ark as the Lord's footstool enables us to understand why the tables of the covenant were placed within it. It was the custom in the ancient East to deposit the deeds of a covenant made between human kings in the sanctuaries of the gods, in the footstool of the idols that symbolized the deity, so that the deity should be a witness to the covenant and see that it was observed. Among the Israelites, there was no image to symbolize the God of Israel, but there was his footstool, and therein the testimony of the covenant was placed and preserved. Thus, the lid, the kaporet, as it says in his book, of the cherubim, which was placed upon the ark, connotes, as it were, the throne of God. It follows that the ark which is beneath the throne is a kind of footstool of God. Before you write Casuto off as a madman, consider the following verses. One of them is, extol the Lord our God and prostrate yourselves at his footstool. That's Psalm 99:5. Let us go to his dwelling. Let us prostrate ourselves at his footstool. That's Psalm 132:7. Kind of sounds like what Casuto just said, doesn't it? He also added, in the end, The chariot is identified with the throne, and even the wings of the cherubim, again, I'm getting this from his book, are regarded as identical with the throne. And not without reason is the divine designation who is enthroned on the cherubim used particularly when the Bible refers to the ark, which carries upon it the lid, the cherubim. Thus it is stated in 1 Samuel 4:4, and brought from there the ark of the covenant of the Lord of hosts, who is enthroned on the cherubim. Now, the only issue that I have with any of this is that it tends to sound like God is copying the people in the East. And I don't believe that at all. I think the people in the East are copying God. Because I believe that when God created man, man knew everything. I think when we were put here, we knew everything. Everything that man could possibly ever know was already in his head when God put us here. Otherwise, God would not have looked at mankind, because he said Adam is mankind. It's not a person named Adam in Hebrew. So when he looked at mankind, he said that mankind was perfect. He used the Hebrew word for perfection. There was no flaw here. Well, the only perfection you have in the Hebrew Bible is those who live according to God's law. So he created us all and set us all here knowing his law. And to know his law is to know him, to know his, if you will, his face. I mean, it's not that you've seen it, but you acknowledge that before him, you are his servant, and that you live according to his law or you are punished according to his law. Whether you want to accept God over you or not, you're going to live by his law. One of his laws is gravity. Jump out of a plane without a parachute, you're going to find out that you're subject to God's law. It's that simple. So man knew this when we started off. But as we got further and further and further away from obedience to our God, different things began to happen. And I think that these other cultures, as they drifted from God and began to put idols in place of God, they were doing with these idols that which they knew from God. It's exactly what happened at Sinai. They saw Moshe get up early in the morning and build the altar. I don't know why I couldn't think of it. He built the altar and he did this and he did that. And when you read the story of them worshiping the golden cow, they follow in exact steps what they just saw Moshe do. Except now they're doing it with a cow. And that's what I think this is. I think the reason why you see all these other cultures and all these other people doing things that are slightly similar to that which comes from God's word is because they started out there and drifted from there. This is not God trying to show himself in a way that we do things or trying to correct things that we're doing wrong. This is God doing what he's always done in the manner that it's supposed to be done. And that's how we notice the differences. I hope that made some sense. Of the words facing the top, Kasuda pointed out that if their faces are pointed toward the lid, the top, then their faces are turned downward, like the seraphim in Isaiah 4:2, which covered their faces with their wings. All right, verse 10. And he made the table tree shittim, cubits, remember what happens? Cubits, length he, and cubit width he, and cubit and half height he. Remember the he, it can be it. All right, so the translation becomes, and he made the table of shittim trees, 2 cubits long, 1 cubit wide, and 1.5 cubits high. And we can compare that to 25:23 that says, and you will make a table of shittim trees, 2 cubits long, 1 cubit wide, and 1.5 cubits high. In his commentary on Exodus, Kasudo said, in Mesopotamia, They would arrange on the table the foods that had been prepared as a meal for the gods, with a little g, such as boiled or roasted flesh, placed in dishes or plates, loaves of bread, jars of wine, milk and honey, and various kinds of fruit, recalling the table set before kings. The Egyptians practiced similar customs in the worship of their gods, and the other peoples of the countries of the east did likewise. In the Israelite view, it was not only inconceivable to associate concepts of eating and drinking in their material sense with the conception of a divinity, but it is related even of a human being like Moses, that when he drew near to the divine sphere, he neither ate bread nor drank water. The parts of the sacrifices that were set aside for God were not prepared by boiling or roasting, and were not placed in dishes or plates upon the table, but were burned on the altar in the sanctuary courtyard, as though the only way to bring them near to the deity was to turn them into vapors and odor, I would have put fragrances, exceedingly fine matter, and without substances, which are dispersed in the air and ascend heavenward. Okay, now let me add this. The sweet smelling savor as the offering, not the vaporizing of the meat. Do you follow what I said? What they're sending to God is not the vaporized meat so he can eat it his way. What they're sending to God is the sweet smell, the savor of the sweet smell. That's what's being sent. It's a kind of a really big way of burning incense. They're sending him the smell. They're not sending him the food. All right. Yeah, we got a little bit of time. Verse 11. And he overlay with it gold pure, and he made to it edge gold round about. We've almost already had this one. Of course, when you're making these different items that are basically square or rectangular, you're saying the same thing just over and over and over again, which is why I've decided not to go through every individual word here. All right, so 11. And he overlaid it with pure gold, and he made the edges of gold around it. Now, if we compare that to 25:24, and you will overlay it with pure gold, and you shall make the edges of gold all around it. It's exactly the same thing. All right, then it says in 12, and he made to it borders width round about and width, width, round about, and he made edge gold to border it round about. Now that one could be a little more confusing, but it's relatively clear. So let me get to the translation here. And he made the edges the width of a hand around it, and he made the edge of gold all around the borders. It must have said yod somewhere. Take a look at that real quick, just for the fun of it. The width. Oh, it said topach, which is the word for width, properly the open hand, the palm, used as a measure of 4 fingers. That's the width of a hand, 4 fingers. All right, so that's the way they're. I don't know if I've ever talked about that before. I don't recall. Verse 12, and he made the edge of the width of the hand, or 4 fingers, if you will, around it. And he made an edge of gold all around the borders. So if we compare that to 25, and you will make the edge the width of a hand around it, and you shall make the borders of gold all around. So that it's going to be like a 1 before edge. Is that okay for those of you who can actually build things? And then 13, and he poured to it 4 rings gold, And he gave the rings upon 4 the corners, that 2 feet to 4 feet its. And again, we've basically already had this just today, right? It's a different object, but it's being built almost in exactly the same way. So, and he cast, remember the casting of when you melt down metal and pour it into a mold, you're casting. So, and he cast 4 rings of gold, and he placed the rings on the 4 corners of its 4 feet. And then 25:26 says, and you will make 4 rings of gold, and you will place the rings on the 4 corners at its 4 feet. This one definitely has feet. All right. Then in 14, corresponding to the borders were they, the rings, houses to parts to bear the table. And again, we've really already had this one even today. You'll recognize it, I'm sure, in the translation. Alongside the borders were the rings for housing the parts for carrying the table. In 25:27, it said, alongside the borders shall be the rings for housing the staves for carrying the table. So they're all built almost identical, right? I think we probably better stop here as we have run out of time today. Shalom, shalom, y'all.